Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar The Last Airbender episode commentary. And this one's going to be for 207, Zuko Alone. Once again, this was recorded about a year and a half ago, so that explains why there's little to no mention of like anything connecting to Korra or anything like that. So it really is just an Avatar episode commentary. I see no point in really like recording this again when I already have this one pre-recorded. So set up your episode so it's ready to go with the opening titles of the show, the fire, earth, air, water bit with all the avatars. And basically I'm going to stop speaking, and then when I speak again, that'll be when you press play on your episode, and you'll be all synced up with my episode commentary to get the best experience out of it. So once again, prepare your episode to go. I'm going to stop speaking now, and then press play next time I speak, basically. Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Bannon or SB Prime here, and I'm the site super moderator for Avatar The Last Airbender Online.com, and I'm here today with the episode commentary for episode 207, Zuko Alone. This is the only episode of the whole series in which a member of Team Avatar does not appear in, which is means that this episode is like a complete character focus on Zuko and his character developing. This episode kind of further makes us feel sympathy for Zuko. Like, the show has done a great job so far already, up to now, of presenting Zuko as kind of like the Team Avatar kind of consider him as a villain, but we know that there's kind of a reason behind what he's doing. It's not so much that he really wants to capture Aang, is that like he has to do it to kind of like prove himself to his father. And there's a previously an Avatar in this episode, and it tells us exactly what this episode is going to be about. We're going to get some backstory on why Zuko is the way he is. The kind of history that we got about Azula and stuff like that. And here we have the Zuko and the ostrich torch, which he stole from Song's family, and we can tell like he's kind of like weak, hungry, struggling as usual. He smells some food and like thinks of stealing it, Blue Spirit style. But then he sees, the woman is pregnant, and these characters that we see here are Ying, who is pregnant with the baby Hope, and her husband Tan, Tahn, who we will see in a few episodes, including the episode where Hope is born in, which is the Serpent's Pass. We see Zuko now running out of water. And there's you see a kind of thing that tells us, there's been like a Fire Nation versus Earth Kingdom battle there. In that, those Earth Kingdom discs that they use in battle are kind of scattered over the countryside. And there we see Ursa for the first time, Zuko's mother. Like the kind of other kind of character defining thing for him, which is not resolved in this series. Which I think is going to be like kind of the main point of the promise for Zuko. This kind of the series for Zuko is not kind of his complete development. It's just kind of like the kind of getting over the fact that he does not need his father's honor to get his honor back from his father. And we see that Zuko buys the feed. Kind of shows that he cares about the animal that the ostrich horse that he has. Sort of kind of thinks back, he doesn't want it to like kind of die. He doesn't want Song's ostrich horse to be. And there's Gao, the kind of leader of this kind of Earth Kingdom kind of soldiers. And then, the Zuko story does a great job of showing us that the Fire Nation is not the only kind of like bad people in the world. These are Earth Kingdom soldiers, but they're just kind of like taking advantage of this town. Like they're kind of just as bad as like the Fire Nation. As this kind of shopkeeper says, they are just a bunch of thugs. And we see Lee there. Interesting that like Zuko calls himself Lee throughout the series as kind of his false name. And we see that Zuko kind of is kind of nice to this kid. He for once kind of accepts the hospitality of some people. And here we're introduced to Gonsu and Sella and their son Lee. And as we know later in this episode, that they have kind of lost a son to the war, Sensu. Yeah, they're Sensu. And once again, this thing where people, Zuko, when people offer him something out of the kind of goodness of their hearts, this time rather than just going straight out no, he like wants to do something to kind of earn it, which it shows some good development for Zuko's character, what he's going through. Like he's just doing this job to the best of his ability. He's not used to this sort of work, being a prince. He's suffered a lot, but he's kind of not used to kind of this sort of building work that kind of regular people have to do. And he's just kind of lost in thought about what has led him to this point, and it's just such a great moment for his character. Here we see the kind of first flashback. There we get Ursa feeding the turtle ducks, which are kind of like a big thing for the relationship between Zuko and Ursa. And we see that Zuko is sort of easily kind of manipulated by his sister there, as he hits the kind of turtle ducks. And then that mother turtle duck, and what Ursa says here, in that mothers will do anything to protect their kind of children. It kind of gives you that. What did Ursa do to protect Zuko? We kind of find out later what happened. And we just see how much Zuko kind of loves his mother. And then we hear young May, Ty Lee, and Azula. And we see kind of Azula has learned her kind of acrobatics from Ty Lee, who is a better acrobat. And again, we got a little reference at the end of Return to Ramashu that May likes Zuko, and we see just how far it went back. And we see Azula manipulating kind of Ursa, make Azula play, make Zuko play with us. And then it sort of shows that Ursa and Azula have a reasonable relationship at the start, but as we'll see throughout this episode, this was Azula and Ty Lee's plan to kind of get May and Zuko to touch, kind of Then we get the little backstory in Iroh. He was involved in the war. Zuko's kind of confused by girls. I mean, Iroh's sense of humor, but also the fact that he was is completely different than he is now in the series. As we'll find out later, the reason for this, he was a kind of cruel, not cruel, but like, he was part of the kind of Fire Nation war machine, that sort of thing. There's the dagger. That's how Zuko got the dagger that we see in the kind of first episode of this season, cut off their kind of top knots and kind of ponytail with. Uncle gives Azula the doll, and she just does not like it. And we see that Iroh was the heir to the throne after Azula. And we see right there that the cruelty of Azula and the fact that this the Fire Nation royal family, well, Ozai's family, is kind of completely split in half. In that Ursa has raised like Zuko almost completely by herself, and as we know, Ozai kind of takes up the training of Azula because she is the kind of better bender. You see Lee steal Zuko's broadswords. And the way kind of Zuko doesn't instantly freak out, he kind of teaches Lee here. And we know that Zuko learned how to use broadswords from Piandao, the swordsman from Sokka's Master episode. See kind of Zuko happy for once. He's teaching him. Zuko goes to leave, and they kind of realize the help he's given, how much of a kind of help he has been here. And Zuko's kind of given this kind of conflict with the Gao, the kind of leader of this group of soldiers. And like how he deals with this is gonna kind of like define like what his time alone has kind of done for him. And just the cruelty of them kind of making fun of the fact that Sensu and his kind of battalion have been captured. They don't show any respect. And then just this kind of aura Zuko has about him, where it does inspire some kind of fear into these guys. Kind of sends them running. And then we go back to the flashback. We see the kind of change in Iroh here. Iroh's son, Lu Ten, died in the battle. And how hard it hits Zuko, but doesn't hit Azula at all. You can tell that like Iroh was always sort of close to Zuko, in that like he knew exactly what Zuko would want from Ba Sing Se, but not what Azula would want, because she is completely focused on kind of Ozai. He gives the knife to Lee, just a little thing made in Earth Kingdom, and then never give up without a fight. This kind of shows how much Iroh knew Zuko, in that he knew about Ozai did really care nothing for Zuko, so never give up without a fight. He knew that Zuko was going to have kind of like a struggle in kind of life. And this kind of shows at this kind of young age just the cruelty of Azula. You see Uncle Lara left the war front because of the loss of his son. And the kind of lack of sympathy that and compassion that Azula shows here. Kind of gives you some more backstory on Azula, explaining why she is the way she is. In that, completely raised by Ozai. He has just kind of like raised her to be kind of a tool for his own gain. He's basically just told her to go around saying stuff like this. Like he should be the heir to the throne. And we see the way Ursa doesn't handle the relationship with Azula that well. She kind of, instead of talking to her and telling her why she shouldn't do this, it's just kind of like, go to your room, like arguing. And here we see that Azula is kind of like the more intelligent, she's the better bender. She is kind of like Ozai's favorite child. And like, it's like Ozai only has one child, and that is Azula. Ozai smiles for Azula's performance. And we see here that she, at this young kind of, when she was young, she could only use the kind of orange-red fire. There, Ozai's comment, she's a true prodigy. So obviously, as she grew up, she kind of learned to kind of add more heat, and still maintain the control. Hence the blue fire. He knows that Zuko's going to make a mess of this, and hence the frown from Ozai there. But he tries hard, we can see here from Zuko. Ursa really kind of caring, like seeing the kind of embarrassment of Zuko. He kind of failed. There shows that Ursa knows who Zuko is, not Ozai. Zuko keeps fighting. He just keeps doing it until he gets it. And just a further kind of manipulation of Azula, she knows what Ozai's going to do. And we get that his bloodline is ended, telling us that like Iroh's kind of wife, or Liu Ten's mother, is kind of out of the picture. We kind of presume that like she had died before this at some stage. Ozai asks for him to be given the birthright. And see the cruelty of all the Fire Lords here, kind of stemming from Sozin. Azulon, just as furious at kind of Ozai here. And like, Azula stays here. She watches kind of like her father get a punishment. Zuko runs away. And just the kind of joy she has here in telling this to Zuko. She's delighted to say that Zuko is going to die. And just the kind of extent of this punishment for Ozai, that like Ozai has to kill his firstborn son, just like to experience the same loss that Iroh had, for the kind of lack of compassion that Ozai showed. And the kind of Zuko's delusion, like Ozai obviously considers this, that he was going to go ahead with it, otherwise Ursa wouldn't have to do anything. Azula always lies. Like he didn't believe her in the first episode of this season. It kind of tells you all you need to know about their relationship. Selak here kind of does not want to lose kind of her second son to this war. Zuko kind of, I have to take action here. He kind of showing that he is fundamentally a good character. Epically kind of just walks into town. The kind of loner character on his own. Scarred prince. Just complete kind of confidence in his ability. She's got such a Wild West feel to it, the standoff. He realizes that they are just as bad as like the Fire Nation. They are cowards in that, they just pick on these people trying to kind of make their way through this kind of harsh time of a war. And then like Zuko doesn't even use the sword, just to kind of to handle the sword, annihilating one of them. And then just like grabs the guy's face and slams his head into the ground for the second guy. Kicks the the spear of that guy, sends him running. And then it's left Zuko versus Gao. Takes out the swords, and it's going to be dual sledgehammers against dual broadswords. Showing that Avatar does not need bending to have a kind of great fight. Here, you see Gao uses some bending, but for the most part it is kind of melee weapons. Zuko cannot really reveal himself as a firebender here because, that would make him the enemy. I know Zuko getting overwhelmed by the kind of power of this bending. Like he takes a massive hit there from kind of like right to the chest, kind of showing, will he get up? Will he never give up without a fight? And here we go, the kind of like defining moment for Zuko with his mother. Ursa has done something to protect. She says that never forget who you are. And like in a way he does. Like we know he's good because he in the war meeting he stands up for the good people, and like but that causes him to be banished, and then he changes. But we see him kind of changing back to the way he was, good. He never gives up here. He gets up, but reveals himself as a firebender. And just pure kind of rage just kind of takes out Gao. I know he has saved this town from them. And this is kind of weird moment in this episode. I just don't quite understand why Zuko reveals himself to be that. Like, he has so much honor from being the prince. When he knows he is banished, he's on his own, away from Iroh. So, like, why does he announce himself as that? Like, he knows he's on the run from the Fire Nation. And then after this, he tries to do something good, give Lee the knife. But, no, they've kind of the lack of sight, sort of these Earth Kingdom people in this town. In that, they just see, like, no, he's a firebender, so he is the bad guy. They don't realize how much he's helped them. And we see with Ursa gone, there's no one to help Zuko, really. We know Iroh kind of later takes up that role as he kind of considers Zuko as his own son, since Ozai does not really care about Zuko. And like we're sort of kind of told that like Ursa kind of has had to go into hiding. She had some involvement in the either she killed a Zulon or Ozai killed a Zulon, and then in Ursa running away, it was all blamed on her, kind of taking all the innocence away from, giving innocence to Ozai, so he wouldn't be a suspect in the death of Azulon. Iroh, in his kind of grief, would not want to become the Fire Lord, so the birthright goes to Ozai. This is how Ozai becomes Fire Lord. And we still haven't seen all of Ozai's face. We haven't seen his eyes yet. And then we kind of get this defining moment, like Azula reveling in the kind of crowning of Ozai, and Zuko just scared by, like, he doesn't have a great relationship with either his brother or either his sister or his father, and now they both kind of have more power. He kind of leaves the town sort of in the same way he came in. He sort of developed and then he sort of went backwards. And proving that he still needs the guidance of Iroh. Again, it's a fantastic episode for Zuko, showing the kind of how he goes back and forth on his journey. He's going to struggle, but he's going to keep trying the whole time. And that is just what Zuko's story is about. The next episode is 208. The chase, and this is the first episode we get to see Toph integrate into Team Avatar, and they were friends at the start. They all kind of had respect for each other in the Blind Bandit, but how they kind of Toph integrates into the group. She's not used to traveling, and Katara and Sokka have traveled together for what's going like 3 going on 4 months at this stage.